I'm going to do a series of 5 things about lots of the characters in Of Mice and Men. So today, 5 things about Whit, and we're going to go through really quickly and hopefully say some useful things about some minor characters. Number 1, Whit is fixated on names in print. Whit found the place again, but he did not surrender his hold on it. He pointed out the letter with his forefinger, and then he went to his box shelf and laid the magazine carefully in it. Look at the way that Whit is described handling this magazine. He views it as a sort of precious thing, something to be prized and protected at all costs. And it seems that Whit, any sign of success is precious, anything that's sort of made it in the world out there. And particularly if it's someone inside the ranch who's made it out there, it provides him with a sort of source of hope. And he does the same with Curly a little bit later on. So he says that Curly got in the finals for the Golden Gloves. He got newspaper clippings about him. So Steinbecker is deliberately creating something around the character of Whit in his fascination of people who have managed to get their names in print. And it's worth sort of thinking about why Whit cares about that, and how that ties into the environment in 1930s America, what's happening at the time in society, and how Steinbeck's hoping to reflect that through his characters. Second thing about Whit, he understands big ranches. He has this conversation with George and Lenny about why they arrived on a Friday. So he says, guy that wants to look over a ranch comes in Saturday afternoon. He gets Saturday night supper and 3 meals on Sunday, and he can quit Monday morning after breakfast without turning his hand. So Whit understands the survival of the fittest climate that we're entering into in the story of Mice and Men. He knows that men are out to get money. They're out to get food, and hopefully for free without having to give anything in exchange. So this plays into that underlying sense of distrust within the novel, so that the boss is sort of sceptical and suspicious of George and Lenny. Curly is as well. Slim doesn't understand why 2 people go around together. Everybody in the whole damn world is scared of each other. And George and Lenny seem to subvert that, don't they? So they arrive on a Friday, and so Whit is slightly confused. It seems you guys are here to stay. I've seen guys who come here and try to get a sort of some money and some food for free without having to work in exchange. Third, Whit sexualizes and degrades Curly's wife. You'll see her plenty, Whit says. She ain't concealing nothing. I never seen nobody like her. She got the eye going all the time on everybody. I bet she even gives the stable buck the eye. I don't know what the hell she wants. It's really interesting because it's a horrible thing that Whit's saying about Curly's wife, but it's also horrible what he's saying about Crooks. So he paints her as promiscuous and provocative. She's the villain here. She's the one who's sort of behaving lustfully, and he kind of condemns that. And at the same time, he has that double standard, doesn't he? Because he promotes whorehouses, or cat houses as they're called in the novella. And it's interesting, isn't it, that he invents unfaithful behaviour. So look at the language. I bet she even gives the stable buck the eye. This isn't something he's noticed. This is something he's inventing about Curly's wife, because it contributes towards that perception of her as sort of provocative, lustful, unfaithful, adulterous. And it's a sort of a trope of women, isn't it, to condemn them of unfaithful behaviour. It goes back years and years with literature, this idea of the woman being impure and it being her fault. And he uses racism to demean her. So it's not just that he sexualizes her, he also degrades her. And it's not that I'm saying that sort of having the eye, looking at flirting with somebody as a person of colour is bad. But we've got to understand this within the context. Whit is saying that it would be worse to give the stable buck, to give Crooks the eye than anybody else. And so he's immediately making a sort of a racist comment there. And this is a good question to ask yourself. Is his approach to her, is it typical of a ranch hand of 1930s America? Is this kind of sexual frustration here something that we might expect? It's worth looking at marriage rates and divorce rates during the 1930s, during the Great Depression. Actually, they rose, but that's a sort of interesting discussion to have around how men behaved at the time when they're surrounded by other men and Curly's wife's the only person on the ranch. Okay, number 4, he seems to have a morbid interest in scandal. I call it morbid because of the final thing that I'm going to go on to, final bullet point on this slide. It was obvious that Whit was not interested in his cards. This is during the when there seems to be something going on between Curly's wife and Slim in the barn, and Curly's gone to find them. And Whit loves gossip. He's enthusiastic about any entertainment, and particularly entertainment where scandal is providing that entertainment. And maybe this shows us something about the monotonous, tedious environment in which he exists. The ranch is somewhere where he's meant to work and then sleep, work and then sleep. And the men try to occupy themselves with cards and horseshoes and games, but really, it's for things like this that Whit lives for. And we know that because of the magazine, don't we? He loves these stories about men that go and sort of partake in adventures and cowboy stories and things like that. So he says, but I like to see the fuss if it comes off. Come on, let's go. So he thinks, come on, let's go to George, sort of encouraging him to go and see this fight between Slim and Curly. But George is having none of it, which again is Steinbeck sort of separating George and Lenny as maybe idealistic characters compared to some of the others. And then at the end, when we find out that they're going to go and chase Lenny because he's killed Curly's wife, Whit said excitedly, "I ain't got a gun." That's interesting, isn't it? Because lots of people within the novel, lots of characters within the novel, don't treat people as people. And Whit's one of those. He's not treating Lenny as a real person here. He's treating Lenny as a character in one of his magazines. This is some sort of Native American that the cowboys are chasing. And Whit can't wait to get on his horse and ride after Lenny. As it's dehumanizing, maybe in a different way from how Carson dehumanizes people, in a way he sort of doesn't understand and comprehend or fathom Candy and his relationship with his dog, and also other relationships on the ranch. Finally, 5th thing, Whit is young and fickle. Steinbeck deliberately calls him young, and we've got to ask ourselves why. Why is Whit the young man? He's not even named for the first sort of 3 or 4 paragraphs in which he's introduced. He's a young man. Why? Well, I think the reason is because Mice and Men is a sort of microcosm of 1930s society, and Steinbeck wants to cover everybody. He wants to cover women, people of colour, people of higher status like the boss, ranch hands like George and Lenny, people who have more sort of stable employment like Slim, and people who are disabled like Candy. So he's got a range of people, and he's got a young person in Whit. And what are the young like? Well, they're easily distracted. They're sort of interested in anything that's going to sort of gratify their short-lived desires. And we see that in his promotion of brothels to George. Well, a guy got to have some fun sometime. And Whit's just an example of someone who he lives in the moment. He lives for the short term. He doesn't have any hope for the future because really he's looking for that easy thrill, that quick fix, something to sort of entertain him in the short term rather than the long term. So 5 things about Whit.